Hey guys, it's Daniel, licensed therapist. Dave Ramsay, financial guru, has relationship advice. Is it any good? Well, I kind of take exception to his financial advice. I mean, don't use a credit card. Can his relationship advice be any good? Well, that's why your guy is here. The pro to tell you if his relationship advice is good or if it should be avoided. Let's check it out.
How do you test financial compatibility with a partner? And is that something you could change about a person?
You can present someone the option to change, and then they decide to change, but you can't change other people on anything. All I can do is present an idea, and then you decide if you're going to pick it up or not. You know, the way we've taught it on the air for years is the data tells us that if you can agree on four things prior to marriage, the probability of you still being married 40 years later is very high.
Okay, here we go. The old common values life advice. To me, yes, we do need some things in common, but this advice is just very simplistic. Although I probably shouldn't assume that people know this advice, but to me, it's kind of like saying, don't date somebody that's terminally ill. Don't date a raging alcoholic. There's some things that I feel like are just common sense. But here, Dave is going to give four values that you need to match up on in order to be compatible. And what he says, have a good relationship projecting into the future. I'm going to give you guys four things from psychology that are going to determine the success of your relationship. But let's keep going with this advice.
If you can agree on your money, because when you agree on how money's going to be handled, you're agreeing on your fears, you're agreeing on your anxieties, you're agreeing on your dreams, you're agreeing on your values, because money flows to those things. So if you can agree on your money, it's very important.
So agreeing on money is important. I do have to say that. But I think that it's very far from foundational, and I don't think it should be number one on the list. To me, what's way more important than money is how we work out our differences. At the end of the day, what's the point of a relationship? It's for us to build a life together. It's a partnership, it's teamwork. It's not a business decision. We don't have to match up on money exactly. There's going to be plenty of differences that you have with your partner, but the way that we work it out is more important than exactly matching up on things. I do agree with Dave here that there are some things where they're just impasses, and if we don't agree, it will be a big problem. And maybe there's some aspects of money that are like that, but more or less, I'm going to have to disagree with Dave here a little bit.
If you can agree on kids, how many we're going to have, how are we going to raise them, are we going to manage the children, or are they going to manage us? You know, that kind of stuff. In-laws, crazies in the family, because every family's got crazy in it. And if you don't think there's crazy in your family, it means it's you. And so, so anyway, you got to deal. How are we going to have boundaries? In other words.
So absolutely, I agree with number two, kids. It's just something we have to figure out before we get married. And I actually knew somebody who got married. He wanted kids. She didn't want to have kids, but for some reason they got married anyways, and they wound up getting a divorce. And to me, I was like, couldn't you have just figured that out ahead of time instead of entering into a marriage and then getting divorced and just wasting time, money, and emotions? So yes, kids is something that you do need to figure out, but it's not some kind of crazy elaborate conversation. And number three, the whole in-laws thing, this is actually the first time I've heard about it. Does it deserve to be on the Mount Rushmore of things you need to figure out before you enter into a relationship? I don't think so. Sure, in-laws can be a problem. Would it be beneficial to talk about it and how it's going to work out, how life is going to look like after marriage? Yes, but is it super important that it's number three? Not necessarily, not in my opinion. Let's keep going.
And then the fourth is being in agreement on religion. If we're going to be atheists, then let's be in agreement about that. If we're going to be Christian, it's very few cross religion marriages end up making it long term because again, it's a value system thing.
Sure.
It's it's how you live your life, your decision making paradigm comes out of your value system, and so that ends up there. So the data says if you agree on those four things. So
isn't this one just blindingly obvious? Religion is such a huge part of people's lives, and it instills them their worldview and values. So obviously, if you have two people of different religions, it's going to be extremely difficult to come together and make a family. And to me, this isn't some kind of crazy revelation. I feel like everybody knows this, although some people do enter into relationships of different religions. But it's not that they don't know, they're basically just ignoring that advice. So far, this advice is pretty basic. I think it's good, but nothing too deep. And I don't think that you should listen to just this, because there's way more that goes into a relationship than sharing these 4 values. So things that are way more important than these 4 values include poor conflict resolution, toxic relationship patterns, poor communication, inability to repair in the relationship, and exacerbating and escalating small conflicts. There's a lot more that goes into it. But let's see if he mentions anything else.
Once I know that, and by the way, the number one cause of divorce is money problems and money fights. If I know that and I'm dating, then it becomes very important, if we're going to get married, that we're compatible, or that we at least agree prior to marriage. Okay. Now you could start out and be going, in the like in the case of Rachel tells the story of Winston taking her out on their first date, and he used a credit card to buy the pizza. And so you don't throw Winston away because he used a credit card in the Ramsay family, right?
Did she want to?
Yeah. He bought the pizza. It's his problem, right? And so that's what's necessary. But the someone explained to Winston later on, that's Dave Ramsay's daughter. He used a credit card. You're a moron. It made fun of him, and then it became a funny thing later. But that's not an indication that we're not compatible on one date. It just said, okay, there's a thing there that the Ramsays don't use credit cards, so we got to talk about this ahead of time, and we got to decide how we're going to do that.
Okay, Dave, you got me. I really like this advice. I feel like there's 2 ways we can look at dating. One is the chase, and 2 is it's an evaluation process. And I am a huge proponent of dating being an evaluation process. Because if it's a chase and you go chase somebody without evaluating, you may get them, but what did you get? You're going to wind up with someone who is terrible for you. So this advice, I think, is wonderful. We should look at dating as an evaluation process.
So typically you don't want to be the same. Like my wife is a saver and I'm a spender. My wife is a scarcity person and I'm an abundance person. So risk, I'm much heavier risk tolerance than she has. And you need that balance, that counterbalance. And Larry Burkett used to say, if 2 people just alike get married, one of you is unnecessary. So you don't want to be just alike, but you do need to have a value system. Like if you detest, for instance, in our case, detest being in debt, you can't stand it, and you marry somebody who just is going to borrow all the time, you're going to have a problem. Hello. I mean, no kidding. And so, or you like to have a plan and know where things are going, and the other person refuses to participate in that, you're going to have a problem. But there's other stuff going on there that beneath the surface anyway. That's more than just the money. The money's just revealing it.
I don't know. This was a little weird for me because he seemingly contradicts himself and his advice earlier. He says that we need to be different. You can't marry someone like you or else you're marrying the same person. And he brings up the example of him and his wife where they have these different values of money, which he says is the number one most important thing, that you line up on your values of money. And I think that begs an interesting question. Is it more important to be alike or different when it comes to finding someone in a relationship? And I actually had a professor answer this exact question in my freshman year of college. He was an amazing professor, Professor Don, and he said that it is actually more beneficial to be alike than to be different. But you know what? I think being different, although it's more difficult to overcome, can be very beneficial in a relationship. I mean, the saver can help the spender be more prudent with his money, and the spender can help the saver be more relaxed and enjoy his money more. So I see the benefit. And Dave says something very interesting at the end. He says that money is just a representation and brings out the deeper stuff. And he talks about a situation where one person refuses to participate in something. And to me, that really raised an eyebrow, almost a red flag. I question, why would somebody who loves this other person, who cares about them, and knows that this other person loves them back and they're both each other's priority, refuse to do something that that other person wants to do. Obviously, we need much more context to the situation. But like I said, that raises an eyebrow for me. But I think what Dave is alluding to is that there are deeper problems than just the money. And I totally agree with that. And so he gives his 4 values of what needs to line up. But let me give you the 4 things established in psychology that determines the success of a relationship. And this comes from Dr. John Gottman, relationship researcher. And it is our relationship guru in the psychology world. And he says that there are 4 things people do that determine the destruction of a relationship. And those 4 things are stonewalling, defensiveness, criticism, and being condescending or having contempt for your partner. So yes, do what Dave says. Not bad advice, but there is so much more. That's just the tip of the iceberg. If you enjoyed this content, consider liking and subscribing. If there's anything else you want me to react to, leave it in the comments down there. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.